listening to the Betmaker Show. This is the NFL post-draft AFC East team season preview for Monday, April 29th, 2019. And now, live from Las Vegas, the host of the Betmaker Show, Brian Blessing.
Hey, we welcome you to the Betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. Great information coming your way on both sides of the counter today on the AFC East with Jack and Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. I think the AFC East is pretty compelling this year. New England, again, is the monster leading the way, as will be the case for the foreseeable future. But possibly the gap may have closed a little bit. We shall see what the boys think. Let's start with Jack. Hi, Jack. How you doing today?
Good, Brian. How are you?
I'm good, sir. It's kind of a broken record, right? Give us the overview and the odds to win the AFC East, and we know who the favorite is.
To win the AFC East, New England, again, a prohibitive favorite at minus 515, 515, followed by the Jets at plus 540, Buffalo plus 1150, and Miami 90-1.
Wow. Well, it makes sense. Hey, let's dive in. It's a broken record. New England 11 over $1.28, 128, and that's to win the season win totals. Forgive me. And Tom Brady is back. Belichick is back. They get a weapon in N'Keal Henry, the wide receiver in the first round. They just reload, replenish. It's just a broken record, right? It doesn't change.
They reload, they replenish, and the opposition in the division never does. So the gap remains, and it's always easy for them to get 11 wins because they'll play Miami twice, Buffalo twice, and the Jets twice.
You know, from your perspective, Jack, New England has, I'm guessing, at least for the last decade, if not longer, probably been right around that 11 mark for a season win total. Generally speaking, what has been the thought from the bettors coming at you guys? Are they always inclined to play New England over, or is this number always shaded so high that it generates two-way action?
It generates two-way action. As we said in some other segments, New England, the smart guys like to bet under, but when you look at their competition in the division, you're starting with their 6 games. They won 5 out of 6 there for sure. Probably 6. So now all they have to do is win 5 out of a division, and they're capable of that. So, yeah, 11 has usually been their average number, and 11 usually dies right there. Not much money either way.
All right, well, we all know about the Patriots. Let's dive into this division a little bit. And, I want to go to Buffalo, and 6.5 over $1.35 is the number. I will throw one at you, and I would just say, full disclosure, I'm from Buffalo, and I follow this team religiously. And listen, you can't bet with your heart. If they're going to get smoked, believe me, I'll go against them. But I think this is a sneaky team this year, Jack. They had so much cap space and did a lot of good work in free agency, getting wide receivers Beasley and Brown. But on the defensive side of the ball, they get cornerbacks Gaines, Kevin Johnson, who from Houston could be sneaky good. Their big acquisition was the center Mitch Morse, which I think is going to hurt Kansas City that he's out of there. They've retooled the entire offensive line, get Ed Oliver on draft day, and then a starting right tackle on draft day. And if you look at what the Bills were in the first half of the season, then Josh Allen came in. Then Josh Allen got hurt. But when Josh Allen came back with basically no supporting cast, the light bulb went off for this kid. I think Buffalo's a team they have a chance to win 8-9 games this year. I think they are on the rise.
I wouldn't disagree with you. We placed it at 6.5 over because historically that's where they've been coming in the last few years. And as you said last year, even before it occurred, towards the tail end of that season, they played well against Miami. They played well against all the other opposition they faced. They win every game. And it will be revealing how Josh Allen plays behind the retool offensive line. He was running for his life last year, and he was mediocre at best. Could he become capable to good with the good offensive line? We'll find out very soon. But I would agree with you. If you ask me Buffalo and the Jets, and as we did before the season begins here, I think Buffalo is as good as the Jets, but most people thought the Jets were better than Buffalo.
Well, see, and that's the thing. I mean, your belief is that, but your job is to generate the right number, and this index has to add up, and you're doing a service. So that human opinion is one thing, but where the money's going to come from is completely another different animal.
You can always turn tail once the money starts coming, and you can switch it around pretty easily.
And the Jets, you can make the same case for them. Season win total of 7 over $1.43. In large part, it's going to come up to how much further does Sam Darnold develop. And he was another guy that by the end of the year, the light bulb had gone off.
Right. He had a moment or two early in the year. Then he hit the doldrums for quite a stretch there. And then, as you said, at the end, he started to show a spark or two. So, I mean, when we say New England is constant, we say Buffalo and Jets are improving. What are we going to say about Miami?
No, there's no doubt. But from the Jets' perspective, too, let's not lose sight of the fact they get Le'Veon Bell. Now, skill position players at the peak of their careers, Randy Moss, maybe if he was out of a game, could have been a 1.5 guy. But you get Le'Veon Bell in there, who's a weapon on the ground and through the air. I mean, that is a monster acquisition for them, for Darnold. And some people believe they may have got the best player in the draft in Williams on the defensive side of the ball. So there's reason for optimism in New York.
That's the reason I was outweighed when I said Buffalo was better than the Jets. When we were putting it together as a group, there were more Jet supporters than Buffalo supporters. But I think we'll be right in the end.
Well, we're going to find out right out of the gate because the Bills play the Jets, and the Jets are 3-point favorites at home in Week 1, right? So maybe we'll get an indicator right out of the gate.
Well, we're basically saying they're even right there.
That's a great point. Home field, that's the general rule of thumb, 3 points for most NFL cities, home field advantage.
Right.
There you go. Miami, 4.5 over $1.45. This one, was there a reaction following draft day? Because all of a sudden you got the Rosen deal where he comes over, and they're not going to hand this to him. And it's a question of when does he get in there. But there may be those days when Miami is sneaky good enough to really knock somebody good off. It's the NFL, man. That's why they play the games.
Well, at 4.5, it's very tempting to go over, but my heart wouldn't be in it. I mean, it's going to be Fitzpatrick starting again. Will he show a spark or two like he does sometimes, and you say, hey, this is the guy that he can be, and then he flattens right out. It's going to be Rosen will take over, I'll say 4 games into the season.
4.5 over $1.45, Jack, means it's a whisker away from going to 5. Not much more money on Miami would prompt that move, right?
No. I mean, and I wouldn't hesitate to go 5 under some money. It'll bounce back and forth there because you're saying a team's going to go 4.5 and 11.5. I mean, that's a bad record.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I was going to ask you about that. You said it could go back and forth. So you think 4.5, 5 could be kind of a little ping pong game that we're going to see all the way up to September?
Right. I think with the addition that Rosen, and maybe he can improve on his performance in Arizona, but he certainly can't get worse than what he did there. I could see this going to 5 under at some point, but they couldn't get my money on it.
Great stuff, as always, from Jack. He's the head odds maker for the NFL. We're not done talking about the AFC East. We're heading to the other side of the counter in the On Deck Circle with Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. Want to remind you, you can follow us on social media. Hope you're enjoying what you're hearing from the odds makers and the handicappers. And we want you to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast service, iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And, of course, you can find all our episodes on our website and sign up for our newsletter at betmaker.com. Don't go anywhere. More on the AFC East when we come back on the betmaker.com Sportsbook Report.
For outstanding information and special offerings and promotions, we invite you and encourage you to sign up for our newsletter today simply by going to the website at betmaker.com.
Continuing on in the AFC East, right here, the betmaker.com Sportsbook Report. Brian Blessing, always thrilled when we have the opportunity to talk to Bruce Marshall. fountain of information from the legendary publication, The Gold Sheet, here in Las Vegas. Another year in the AFC East, Bruce. Another year of the Patriots at 11 wins over $1.28.
Yeah, I mean, since it's been a long time since they had fewer than 11, and I think that's what they got last year. And that was somewhat of a down year. I don't know that we can project them under here, so it's a no player and over. I'm not sure how much the division has improved. We've got new coaches in New York and Miami. Buffalo trying to regain some traction as well. And again, it looks like same old up here. Bill Belichick has had to make a couple of moves in the offseason, but he's been able to slide players in and out in the past without too much of an impact. Now, Gronk's retirement is potentially an issue, although he's missed considerable time here the last couple of years because of injury, and they have still continued to hum. So I don't know that Gronk's absence is going to be as impactful as it might have been at one point a few years ago. They've proven they can play without him. And not that Safarian Jenkins, the replacement signed in free agency, is going to be an upgrade, but I think he can certainly hold the fort. What they did in the draft when they went for N'Keal Harry first, they came into the offseason. There was a point in which they didn't have a wideout other than Julian Edelman on the roster. Now, they added some pieces in free agency, lesser pieces, including Demaryius Thomas from Houston via Denver before that. I'm not sure Thomas is going to come back from that Achilles injury at least soon enough to help them this year. So Harry might be an interesting addition here for New England. But as long as Belichick's there, as long as Brady is there, they're the class of the division and probably the class of the AFC. And 11 looks like a very reachable number and win.
And real quick, Bruce, on the Patriots, Belichick, Brady, we think of Brady in the red zone and making the big plays. But they really now have some bullets in the holster, do they not, from the running game perspective? Michel is a big-time player.
He is, and I think he maybe is the best back they've had in this entire run here, and a legitimate home run threat, and he made an impact down the stretch, certainly, and was close. I mean, if he had broken that long run in the last quarter in the Super Bowl, he and not Edelman might have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. So, yeah, it gives them certainly some extra balance here. And the rich get richer in the AFC East, and that was a great pick last year. And it's interesting. They've, added some toys for Brady in the early rounds, and I think N'Keal Harry may have a similar impact this fall.
It's easy to say it's going to be just another year, but, picking up Le'Veon Bell, they get Jamison Crowder. On the defensive side of the ball, you get C.J. Mosley, and you go to the draft, and there are those that do believe Quinnen Williams, the defensive lineman from Alabama, could have been the best player in the draft. So, in Darnold's development, the Jets could be sneaky good.
They might be. Now, they've changed coaches here, and they brought up Adam Gase from Miami. Again, a little curious. Guy gets fired within the division, and he's hired elsewhere, but we know there are some circumstances at Miami that made it pretty difficult down there. He did get to the playoffs a few years ago with the Dolphins. He's got an offensive mindset and an offensive background. And I think that's what they wanted here to take the place of Todd Bowles, who had a defensive background. Now you want an offensive coach to come in here to fast forward the development of Sam Darnold. You mentioned the additions there, Crowder, and certainly Le'Veon Bell, who was the prize of this free agent class. The Jets were, active elsewhere. Osemele trade with the Raiders, a pretty good guard, adding some pop to the offensive line. Mosley over from the Ravens. Williams, top defensive player. I'm not sure Williams was the proper pick for the Jets, though, because they're pretty well set on the defensive tackle spot, although he's a great player and he's going to make an impact. But I was thinking they might not go there with that pick, but nonetheless, they added a potential stud. And yeah, it looks like the Jets are at least on the road to recovery here with this improved supporting cast, certainly around Sam Darnold.
I think the Buffalo Bills, Bruce, and I alluded to this with Jack in the previous segment, are one of the more intriguing teams. 6.5 over $1.35. I think the season win total will move to 7. They rebuilt this team in free agency. They took their lumps last year on purpose after making the playoffs the year before, had $70 million in dead cap space, rebuilt the offensive line, John Brown, Beasley at wide receiver, and then drafted extremely well. And everybody's like, well, where's the wide receiver? They need a wide receiver, one that's going to fly under the radar, not a lot of people know about. The leading receiver in the CFL they got was Duke Williams, who I think is going to make this team and actually have an impact for them. And I'm basically going on the premise, at long last, Buffalo has a regime that knows what they're doing. Brandon being the general manager and Sean McDermott, I think these guys know what they're doing and are on the same page.
I do too. In fact, I think the Bills are actually more likely to make a challenge to the Patriots this year, or at least maybe get into second place than the Jets. I mean, they're just 2 years removed from the playoffs, and so it's not that big of a leap. I remain unabashedly in Josh Allen's corner. Let's look what this kid has been able to do, first of all, as a quarterback at Wyoming, running a throwback offense that was designed for Nebraska in the 1970s, because that's what the head coach Craig Bull runs up at Laramie, to actually shine enough in that offense to be an NFL top round pick is something that none of these other quarterbacks who've been drafted high in the last couple of years have had to overcome. And then last year, let's face it, that was not a high-tech offense Buffalo had last year. There were some limitations with his receivers. And by the end of the year, Allen was making some plays. I think he's a winner. He can make plays with his legs as well as his arm. And I think the upside is great for him. I actually kind of like some of these additions they made free agency. I think Beasley and Brown give them some upgrades at wide receiver. And you talk about adding Duke Williams. You know, maybe those guys aren't that big target that they would have liked, but they are upgrades from last year. And we know this defense is nasty. It ranks second overall, and they add Ed Oliver from Houston, who could be an impact defensive lineman for them. The arrow is pointing up in Buffalo. I love the quarterback. I think he's only going to get better, and I maintain this. He was the steal of last year's draft. Some other teams are going to regret not taking him. And I think the Bills maybe have a chance to get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think they clearly go over the 6.5. The one thing, and to put it to bed, everything you said, but what Josh Allen accomplished last year, specifically after he returned from injury, and he was not the starter at the beginning of the year, but in the last month, what he accomplished with nothing. They had no offensive line, and their best wide receiver was an undrafted free agent, Robert Foster. So whatever he accomplished last year, he did by himself.
I agree. And, some of these, I'm going to even throw Patrick Mahomes in there. If he had to quarterback at Wyoming and running that offense up there, and he had to be at Buffalo last year, there's no way we'd be talking about him the way we are. The fact Josh has been able to flourish in the circumstances he's been in is a credit to him. And I think this kid is a star in the making.
All right, we move on to the Dolphins and wrap it up here. 4.5 over $1.45. So it's a whisker away from going to 5, Bruce. You clearly a lot of work to be done down in Miami, but very quietly we'll know in a year or two, maybe a couple of years. I think the Josh Rosen thing works out for them. I really do. I looked at him and did not think he was atrocious in any way, shape, or form on a very bad football team. And I think legitimately the case could be made that Rosen was better than any quarterback drafted this year, and they got him at a bargain price.
Well, they did, and it's a worthwhile gamble on their part. Now, they've also gambled another Belichick disciple. Now comes in there as a new head coach, and Brian Flores off the staff up in Foxborough. Again, let's see if another Belichick disciple strikes out as a head coach. I don't know. But I think there was so much heat being put on the Dolphins down there in South Florida for putting together what looked to be a Mark Cuban Dallas Mavericks-like tanking this year to maybe get in position to draft very highly and a chance at Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert at quarterback high next year. You usually don't see NFL teams tank like that. They were getting enormous heat down in South Florida for effectively looking like they're going to throw away this year. So I think that had part of the reason to do with getting Rosen. He's got a 1-year window to do something. And I think it was worthwhile for him, but I'm not sure how this situation is going to work out. The odd man out here, oddly, could be Ryan Fitzpatrick, although, I suppose I could keep he and Rosen this year. It looked like Fitzpatrick was going to be a one-year stopgap for them, but we will see. I'm not sure about the new head coach here, and you are throwing Rosen in on the deep end once again in a situation that's sort of rebuilding. It could work out for the Dolphins. I'm not near as bullish on them as I am Buffalo right now. And again, and part of it also is the new coach, because I'm not sure he's going to do any better than Matt Patricia or some of the other recent Belichick disciples. We'll see.
And the one thing I would say to you, if you were going to saddle up and play Miami, I say this every year, it's the worst home field advantage in the NFL. And unless they're like 7-1 and having a great season, after the 5th, 6th, 7th week, that place is empty. It's a horrible home field advantage. One benefit, though, for the Dolphins is they start with a lot of games at home, and that could be at least a benefit in terms of trying to go over 4.5.
Yeah, it might, but you're right. I mean, they get, and not only that, a lot of fans have moved down there from elsewhere down in South Florida. So there's always fans of the other teams that show up there. I will say this about that stadium: at least they put sort of a roof over it a couple of years ago. Not a full roof, but I mean they kind of cover the stands a little bit because it gets pretty hot there in September. So it's a little bit better watching in the stadium. But you're right, the fans, they disappear when this thing starts to go sideways after midseason. We'll see. I think this is an interesting. They gave themselves at least a little chance here with Rosen. Had they not made that trade for Josh, I think I would have been looking definitely under in Miami. We'll see.
Now, Bruce Marshall never disappears. He always shows up with great information. There's your preview of the AFC East. And we hope you enjoy these podcasts. And we hope you'll follow right along. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, Libsyn, SoundCloud, and others. And, of course, you can find all the episodes on the website. Sign up for the newsletter right here at Betmaker.com. I'm Brian Blessing in Las Vegas. Thanks to Bruce Marshall from the Gold Sheet. Jack, the head NFL odds maker at bookmaker.eu. I'm Brian Blessing, and we hope you'll stick around and join us for more great information right here at Betmaker.com.
Let's make some money tonight.
Well, that's the Betmaker Show for now. We publish multiple times each week. We'd like to thank you for listening, and if you liked what you heard, please take a moment to leave a rating and review, or subscribe to our show feed, or share our show with a friend or two and help us grow the show. We very much appreciate it. Visit us on the web at betmaker.com. And reminder to sign up for the newsletter. Thanks to our engineer, Darren Vandermolen, and producer, Mike Gallivan. The Betmaker Show is a production of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated. Betmaker is a registered trademark. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this content without the express written consent of Cardinal Marketing Incorporated is strictly prohibited.
The handicapping and sports odds information contained on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Please confirm the wagering regulations in your jurisdiction, as they vary from state to state, province to province, and country to country. Using this information to contravene any law or statute is prohibited. The podcast is not associated with, nor is it endorsed by any professional or collegiate league, association, or team. This podcast does not target and is not intended for an audience under the age of 18. If you think that you have a gambling addiction, stop this podcast now and please seek help.
Gambling and betting on sports is a form of entertainment and should be about having a good time. But when done excessively, it may negatively affect other areas of a person's life, such as their physical and mental health, school or work performance, finances, and or interpersonal relationships. At betmaker.com and the Betmaker Show, we're concerned about the addiction that gambling may cause, and for this reason, we encourage everyone to practice responsible gambling. An approach to gambling that helps you ensure that it remains an enjoyable activity. Here are the main principles of responsible gambling. Don't think of gambling as a way to make money. Always gamble with money that you can afford to lose. Set limits and stick to them. Never chase losses. Don't gamble when you're depressed or upset, and create a healthy balance. Always be aware of how much time you spend gambling or thinking about gambling. And do not allow gambling to cause you to miss out on time with family and friends or time spent on other activities you enjoy. By following these guidelines, gambling can be a good time and great entertainment. If you feel at any time that your gambling is taking away from important areas of your life, is causing you stress or depression, or is leading to financial losses that are beyond your control, please reach out for help. Learn more at responsiblegambling.org.